Hello and welcome. This video is to walk you through some basic steps of color rendering, and the mediums that we're going to be using today are your water-based markers and the kinds of Prisma pencils. They're kind of wax-based pencils. Prisma happens to be the brand on this one, but there's a number of brands that you can use that will work just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a demo today about creating one of the colors on the color wheel. And you see I have two different ones here. For ease of purpose here, I'm going to go ahead and I will use this tab on the end to match it. This color wheel also would have the ability for me to hold it up against there. I have a little bit of a white gap, so I think I'm just going to go ahead and hold it out on the edge. And the paper that you see here is a marker paper. It is somewhat translucent, if you can see the materials underneath it. And this would allow me, when I'm doing some renderings at a later time, if I was tracing over or trying to render a specific area. So for instance, like if I was trying to render just this size of a square, I could see it underneath it, or the circle. Today we're just going to start from scratch. I have a pile here of paper, but we're just going to go ahead and use this one sheet. And again, we're going to start with your marker base and then put the pencil on top. And for the demo today, I'm going to simulate the blue. Now in the color wheel, we're sensitive to value, the yellow being the lightest on the wheel and violet being the darkest. And if I were to render the rest of the colors as well, I would need to be conscious about what my value is, making sure that violet would be the darkest and the yellow if I was rendering all of the 12 hues. But for today, we're going to just work with the blue. And what's important to think about with color mediums is that when I blend them, they are subtractive in nature. So the more medium I put down, whether I move in a lined motion, I move in a circular motion, wherever I overlap, you will get darker areas. So the more I put down, the more subtractive or darker or more mute of its chroma or intensity it becomes. You can use what's called a blender. And if you take the blender soon after the medium's put down, you can work that to help even those things out. And this is a great way to get a good, even, solid color, an opaque presentation, like what we'd see in a paint chip or something like this here. And you can move in whatever direction. Now, when you get done with that, you can see your medium is left. Before you would go on to your next medium, you would want to just work your way off to the side and try to expel that. So if I were trying to do a red or a green next, it's not going to mess with it. And always be comfortable with doodling off to the side. Or if you didn't want to mess that sheet up, you could go ahead and do it on a second sheet of paper. And now we can see that we're back to its original nature. You're always going to start at the light value, so around your 10 or 20% if you can, and you want to get to the marker that's close, the base color that you're trying to get. So we were trying to get blue, so I was pulling this blue. If I were to have picked a darker blue, again, that might be fine if we're going to go ahead and try to match the blue. I can also try to run a lighter color to work its way in there. But if I were trying to get a light blue, this would have never been able to try to get lighter. So even if I were to take like a white pencil and run it over the top, it's going to be very hard for me to do that. But for today, we're trying to get a good, solid, true blue here. I can try different pencils. And when I do that, I want to make sure that I'm evenly blending the materials so that it has what we call that opaque quality. And we would work that over. And it may not work your first time. You may need to explore. You never know what the combination of mediums white might work to. So far we're looking pretty good here. I'm going to anticipate a little bit of the color here. I want to experiment if I were to add what they're calling a Copenhagen blue, just to get it a little bit more closer to the true, what we might often think of as like a cobalt blue for our true blue. And the other thing you're going to see that's going to happen is when I put my medium down, and again, you can work it in different directions to try to make sure that it's even. Something you're going to see is that you're going to have all of these streaks. And what you don't want to do is smear it. So if I smear it off like that, you're going to get on your hands. You try to do your next color, and that's kind of a mess. So what you want to do is you want to use your drafting brush and pull it off. Now when I get done, if you imagine that we're looking for the color to be represented here, I'm just going to put those around it so you can see how it matches. Looks like we're doing pretty good. I'm going to take a little bit more of this color again, just have it so that you can see it. And then of course I would want to make sure I do it over my whole area. There we go. And then when we take a look at it, we can see that we have matched our blue. If for some reason, let's say you wanted to go a little bit darker in value, maybe you feel like that might be a little bit too light. The other materials that you can use are gray pencils. And when we use gray pencils, that gives us the ability to blend it. Right, so I'm just going to grab, I've got a white, I'm going to grab something more like our grays here, some of the cools or medium grays, and I could work that in to see if I want to lighten it a little bit. You're going to get to a point though where the medium won't take it anymore. So I just want to run this over just a bit. And know that when you're looking at the light in your home versus perhaps what you're seeing here on the video, every time the light can look slightly different based on, remember, that color rendition ability of the lamp source. And so I'm just going to take this one more time to blend over. You can move. And again, pushing down hard. Now, sometimes your materials might break. You're going to hear a sound here in a minute. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use an electrical pencil sharpener. You want to get that sharp tip. And if you were doing it kind of where you needed to be a mobile situation, you might want to invest in one, like just a good old-fashioned manual one. There we go. And I just want to make sure I'm going to get it nice and as solid quality as possible. I'm using it like a blender now, like we did the marker blender. Now I'm using this as a pencil blender. Okay. One more time over. I can tell that my medium isn't taking it as well anymore, so we're going to go ahead and stop. And a lot of times I just take a little bit of a sheet here and I hold it around it, and then I compare it to what I have there. One thing to note, that once you lay your marker base down and you then once you put pencil over it, trying to go back and add a marker on top, just show you what that would be like. It may even it out a bit for you, and you could try that, but do you see how it's starting to smear? I'm just going to zoom in for you. It's starting to smear now, and most likely it will not remain on the surface. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to dab it. You could use a tissue. Let's see if it comes off. Not too bad. So just in this case, it took it other time, but see, I've got it on my finger now with it. And if you were to transport your drawing or start rendering another area, just be careful if you're going to lay that marker back over the top. That's something to be careful about. I do want to run through one last idea here, that if for some reason you didn't have a blue, what we want to think about is how our color wheel is divided into two halves. From yellow-green onto red-violet, I'm going to actually use this side here with the point of the arrow, so it shows you how it goes directly across. So these two are considered neither warm nor cool. I'm not going to say neutral because they're not tan, taupes, browns, or beiges like we typically hear neutral to be, but they're considered neither warm nor cool. This side of the wheel is warm. This side of the wheel is cool. So if I was trying to, and I have to move my dial now, but if I was trying to get this blue, like we were just working on, I could consider that to be that cool color. And if that was the case, I could think about my grays. I could use a cool gray, and they'll see that grays are set up in percentages. And this would be a 0.05. I could then go ahead and try to put the pencil down and blend it. Again, pushing very hard and blending that in place to see what I can do. A full set of pastels of basically the rainbow are a good place to start, but grays sometimes are needed if it's hard to get something. Other times you could also invest in colors like light umber, other browns if you're trying to get like wood, when you would actually render wood, that sort of thing. Or we could start out with a darker cool gray. I can move in a circular motion. Again, remember it's subtractive in nature, so it's getting darker as I'm moving the medium. And that might give me a better chance to getting to that color. I could also see about perhaps a 50%. This would be the idea of the 50%, because that 100% is your black. So the higher percentage is the darker. And you can see this got us a little bit closer to where we started when we did that, and because your goal is to make sure that it is not dark. So now I could come in, and I was using some of those blues, but I could also, I've got this one called Ultramarine, and I could come in and I can pull that over. Again, getting it nice and solid so that it looks very opaque. It requires you to press hard, and you should be getting all these little shavings that are falling off as you are rendering. Right, so I'm pushing really hard and I'm getting it down. Now I could look back and I could see, well, how am I doing with the blue? And again, holding it up right along the edge, you could see I'm making a little bit more like a blue-violet. But if I work to perhaps, let's try maybe a lighter blue, see if we can blend it down to make it a little bit lighter. You could certainly do that. But again, remember, see, it's subtractive in nature. It's going to be harder for me to go from darker to lighter. So just blend this a little bit more. And don't be too worried about what the edges look like at this point. If you're just practicing to get started to know how to do something like this, you know, you can hold up your edges and see. To me, it looks like we need to do a little bit more with this Copenhagen blue again. But it is getting more difficult to blend the medium. So the better approach may be for me, rather than at what this one was for the 50% right here, maybe I would rather do a 20 or a 30% to get that base. I'm gonna just try to run this over a little bit more again. pressing it to blend it, going the other direction as best I can to make it even. Okay. I'm going to try to find the truest blue that I can find. I've got some other pencils off camera that I'm pulling over. This is a blue indigo. You can see what something like this would look like as well. And again, we want to try to make it as even as possible. Okay, so working lighter and working our way back up. If I were to compare my two, I prefer that method, but just to show you there are ways to work with your gray and build your pencils. So having your set of pastels of the different colors, as well as a kit of at least 72 of your pencils, whether they're Prismacolor. I even have some in here that are just some inexpensive ones. I think I just had that one in here. I saw this one had just like a Sargent, even erasable. You could see about something like that. But that's the idea of creating a color on the color wheel using marker paper and with a marker base and a pencil top. Thanks for watching.